Now, we shall talk about the three important documents that form the information security documentation of an organization. There need to be an information security policy, there need to be an information security standard, there should be an information security practice. Three documents actually comprise the information security documentation of an organization. Now, we should clearly understand what is a policy, what is a standard and what is a practice. As you see in the slide, the policies are sanctioned by senior management that drive standards which are built on sound policies and carry the weight of the policy. And these standards actually drive the guidelines, which are basically practices and procedures that include detailed steps required to meet the requirement of the standards. This is very easily defined, but very difficult to comprehend. So, let me start giving you examples where you clearly understand the difference between a policy, a standard and a practice. So, well written policies should spell out who is responsible for security and what needs to be protected and what is an acceptable level of risk, but you actually stop there. For example, all email communication must be strongly encrypted. This is a policy, and it will say who is responsible for ensuring this policy. There will be one part of the IT wing or a communication part of the IT wing, and they will say he is responsible for seeing that all email communications are strongly encrypted, and the policy stops here. Now, when somebody evolves the standard for this policy will drive that the next document, the standard document, to go and include statements like use an encryption that is not yet proven to be breakable, say in less than 30 minutes. This is what the standard will say. So, what is driving this standard? The word strongly encrypted drives the standard to go and say that you can't break it in less than 30 minutes. So, in general, standards are much more specific much more specific than the policies. They are basically tactical documents that they lay out some specific steps and processes that need to be followed to achieve certain goals. Now, this standard will go and drive a practice. What is practice? Practice is the clear down to earth step by step procedure by which you go and implement a policy statement with on desired standards. So, there is a policy and there is a standard which it has driven. Now, the procedure will go and implement what the policy says as decided by the standard. For example, in this case, provide Wi-Fi router with AES encryption connected to a manageable switch. Right. So, this will give you that AES encryption, for example, can give you an encryption which is less than 30 minutes, which ensures that within less than 30 minutes one cannot break a password. So, policy essentially talks about a very broad guideline. The standard goes into a little more specific and the practice actually implements this. So, what should be part, all that I have put in red in the slide should be part of the different documents. For example, the policy here which says all email communication must be strongly encrypted, your standard should say use an encryption that is not yet proven to be breakable in less than 30 minutes, and the third, your practice should say provide Wi-Fi router with AES encryption connected to a manageable switch. So, just elaborating on what we have seen, policies are basically statements, while standards are specifications needed to realize what is stated, while practice is the procedure that help realizing these specifications on the systems. Policies should be flexible, otherwise you lose direction. For example, while arriving at an information security policy, suppose I talk of AES, it is not what a policy should say. Then it means that the fellow who is implementing the standard, the fellow who is realizing fellow who is arriving at the standard and the fellow who is actually realizing it in practice, we lose all the flexibility. He can't do any cost benefit analysis. So, in some essence the policy should be a very broad guideline and it should be flexible, it should just be a guide to the organization. In addition, so when you are arriving at a policy, you start going into nitty-gritties, you also lose the focus, the main focus of the policy. The main focus of a policy is more than just giving all these things, we have to also look at another very important aspect, namely the legal issues. There should be no conflict with law, and this is an administrative aspect of the security policy. For example, I want to put cameras to monitor, then there is a law which says that you should explicitly state that you are being monitored. I can't actually make an encryption algorithm for my phone, a telephone, which and communicate voice with using personal encryption on a normal phone, right. I may not, a country's policy may not, and different countries would have different policies. So, when I am doing encryption of voice calls on a normal telephone network, even because the telephones across a main office and a branch would be a normal telephone. So, can I go and encrypt? So, there can be some telecom regulations there. So, all these things need to be taken care when you are arriving at a policy and a standard. And more importantly, you do not know the threat models, how somebody is going to attack you, you do not know. So, we need to have lot more technical insight into this. So, the policy should basically dwell upon what is correct, wrong, and if somebody does something wrong, what should be the penalty for violation, and that person feels that he has not done something wrong, there should be a process for appeal. So, please understand that the whole environment that we are talking of today is not a very well defined environment, for the simple reason that nobody understands what are all the threats. So, I can't just go and, so we will have some broad guidelines and we will have certainly some penalties for this broad guidelines, but then these guidelines has to constantly be refined based on experience. And again we should keep what law says, that no innocent should be punished. 100 criminals can go unpunished, but not one innocent should be punished, and that is very important, otherwise this will not give a security to the user. So, when a user uses it and if there is an unknown threat, a threat which he does not know happens, for example, suddenly some money from your account, from a customer's account goes off, the bank should not go and say you are wrong to the customer, then he will not use internet, he will not use any of your alternate channels. Then there will be a regulation which will say that checkbooks are mandatory. Someone opts to keep out of alternate channels should be given the permission to, there should be a way by which someone can keep out of alternate channels like your internet banking or mobile banking. Then there will be a regulation like that. So, if you really want people should adopt it after they are convinced, and if there is some violation that has happened, there should be enough proof to go and prove that the violation has happened because of a wrongdoing of some individual, and that proof in today's context is going to be a very complex thing, because somebody has hacked into your account. Is it because you broadcasted your password, or he hacked it into the password? Is it because your password was weak, or it is because the software that was actually evaluating the strength of the password is weak? So many dimensions come into it, and so this is the basic difficulty. So, that is why we say security policies are easily said, easily lectured, but very difficult to implement. Now, let us go, and I just want to end this module from here to the end of this module. I want to basically talk about, give you a guideline on how you can implement a security policy from scratch. The question is, should I really start from the scratch? The answer is no, you cannot really start from the scratch. One of the important things that at least I believe is that all the security vulnerabilities should be made, that an organization faces should be actually made open, because it is a collective exercise for all of us to learn. The regulators also should encourage people to come out openly on the vulnerabilities they have faced. Yes, there was a vulnerability based on which there was a fraud that has happened in this organization. This should not be taken as as a black mark on the organization, because the same vulnerability can happen to another organization at some point of time. So there should be a collective learning that should come up, so that we come out with more strong security measures. The organizations, the management should also come out of this stigma that if there was a vulnerability, there is indeed a big black mark on the organization. It is not the case, because nobody has actually understood the very large threat model. What are the different possible ways by which somebody can attack your system? That is not a very comprehensive model. Given that, I do not think anybody should feel very bad if some things happen, but nevertheless you should take lot of steps to prevent frauds, IT related frauds, but there should be a forum where people should open up their mind and talk about the real frauds that are happening, and that should be a collective learning. So given this, let us go. So there are certain standards, for example the Trusted Computer System Evaluation Criteria, the TCSEC C2 standard that is available. So there are several standards which could be taken as a baseline for developing a security policy. What is a baseline? A minimum level of security that a system, network or device must adhere to. This baseline document is available, and you take this baseline document and start building on top of it. And once you have its baseline document, then you can also have the theoretical models like a Bell and LaPadula theoretical model, well established and practiced today, Bell and LaPadula model, the BIBA model, the access control list, etc., which will help you build the security. We have talked about these models in the early part of module 1, and we will talk about it in larger detail in our subsequent information security introduction courses, level 2 and level 3, which we plan in subsequent months. Once you have a framework, you decide on a framework, we have given you some examples and some models, some study. The next important thing is that how do you classify your information assets? Naturally you are classifying your information assets based on the security, because we are talking about information security here. So you basically classify it based on sensitivity of the information. But again, this classification should be easy to comprehend, right? You should not have a classification that people can't even understand, because the person who is going to classify, for example risk management, suppose I want to do a risk management of different assets that you have, different accounts in a bank for example. If I am going to implement some crazy policies, actually a manager, when he is trying to give an loan, right, he has to understand what is the risk involved, and your policy should help him understand. You can't put some 100,000 formulas and say go on work on these formulas and evaluate, because this is lot of subjective evaluation needs to happen here. So when you classify information based, I am just gave an example of this, your information classification should be very easy to comprehend, and there should be no duplication of classification, that is something. So at some point when I look, this information is of priority or level 2 of confidentiality, when I see from another angle it is level 6 of confidentiality, right. This type of inconsistencies should not come, and in case this type of inconsistencies come when you are classifying information, then you should say that if duplication occurs, the highest level of the sensitivity so far should be assigned to that. So, even at some point some way of looking at some information asset, if I say it is level 6, but some other fellow some other way of looking at the information asset, some other procedure wants it to be level 2, then this particular information asset will be at level 2. Now, this is the broad guideline of how do you classify information, but now we will come into specifics of information classification. Information can be top secret. See, we should understand, so everything cannot be top secret. So, what is a top secret? Suppose I want to go and start discussing about merging my company with something else, some other organization, or I am having a very strategic information, I am going to price this at some way so that I have a competition edge over other, I am trying to evolve a product for the next generation. So, these type of information are very top secret, and once it is leaked, the entire company or your business model totally can collapse. Then there are certain informations which need to be kept highly confidential. For example, customer's account, right? It is very difficult to get the amount of money somebody has stored in some bank for a X to get information about Y. It is highly confidential. Or a patient's medical record, for example, if you look at information security at the health level, the HIPAA type of policies say, right. So, this is information generated by day to day operations, these are also highly confidential, but some leakage of this, for example, your profit and loss on a particular quarter is highly confidential, it is not top secret, right. So, but it is highly confidential, because once you leak it, it may have some temporary or a semi permanent, say for a long temporary or a little longer duration impact on your business, it can have an impact, but it is not that your entire company will close. So, that is what we term as highly confidential. Then the next thing is proprietary information. This proprietary information will be known to a larger section of your organization. For example, you have already made a design and that is going inside your product. It is not still that you are revealed. For example, if I am going to merge a company A with company B, I may not have even revealed it to the second level management. It is between CEO and the board or something like that. But a proprietary information is, I have made a design and I am selling products out of this design, but the secret which is there in that selling of this product should not be leaked. If it is leaked, then it becomes a very big your competitiveness in the market, right. Somebody can really start mimicking you. So, that is why the intellectual property rights, IP, patenting and other things come out of this. But the details about some of the processes and some of these things that are very specific to your organization are called proprietary information, and that should not be revealed. So, there are clauses the employees actually sign what you call as the non-disclosure agreement, basically for these type of proprietary information. But please understand that the three information that I have put in this slide are indeed different. Then there are information which are only internal use only, for example, the memos given or the internal circulars or revealing of which may not cause financial loss or which may cause financial loss. These are all circulars which are internal to the organization, which should not be revealed to the external, but here more people come to know. Then there are public documents which are press statements, annual statements, etc. So, when you look at the classification of your information asset, now we are talking about documents alone, we have been talking about documents alone, the same thing is for the software, the data, etc. We have also talked about data, for example, the patient's data and customers account information, etc. So, if you look at from the top secret to highly confidential to proprietary to internal use to public documents, the number of people who will have access to this information increases from top to bottom. It is like a pyramid. Now, in the next we will talk about roles and responsibilities.